Yeah, thank you for joining me in the weekly mentorship for Data Science Network Community. My name is Alex Yumagwa. Today, I'll be giving a lecture on effective data visualization and storytelling. This lecture is going to be a story lecture. I'm going to tell you stories with data, and what we'll cover, we'll look at what is data storytelling. We'll look at qualitative and quantitative data visualization and storytelling, and I will run you through good and bad data storytelling. So I want you to relax as you follow me through this series of lecture. First, I'll start with our elementary schools. Uh, from elementary school, we were taught how to read and write. Telling stories was a crucial part of our elementary schools. We learned tales of animal kingdoms, uh, Cinderella story, and the rest of our childhood memories. We learned how to put words together, learn how to construct sentences, and how to make words into stories. We did mathematics, we learned how to make sense of numbers. But the challenging story with maths was that no one taught us how to tell stories with numbers. Even if learning how to read and write, we're able to learn how to tell story with what we say, but with the computation, arithmetic knowledge we've got from the elementary school, we couldn't go beyond multiplications, addition. We couldn't tell story about that. And this is what brought about telling stories with data. That is the essence of data visualization. And we live in the world where data is increasing every day. And being able to visualize data and tell stories with it is key to turning it into information that can be used to drive better decision making. Organizations want to make decisions. Companies want to make smart decisions, but they want the decision to be data driven. Now, how do you, as a data analyst, as a data scientist, how do you tell a story with your data? When you conduct a research, how do you tell a story of your findings? And your data story, your data has a story. Every data has its own story. And your analytic tools cannot tell the story of your data. It can only analyze. When you work with SAS, when you work with Microsoft Power BI, when you work with Tableau, you can only analyze and give results. But it takes you as an analyst to tell the story of your data with an effective visualization. Now, if we look at what is data storytelling, data storytelling is a step beyond data visualization in that it entails putting research findings into a visually attractive summary that gives a picture of what the findings are. You've done the research. These are the result of your research. What is the visual summary of your findings? How would I look at your visual representation or summary of your findings and understand the story behind it? This is data storytelling. As I always tell people that data have a voice, data have a story to tell, but it only takes an analyst to bring out this story. You've probably heard of dashboard, and I believe you might have built dashboard with Microsoft Power BI or Tableau or Lucidchart and other tools available online. But if your dashboard does not communicate a story, then the dashboard is not an effective dashboard. Quality data visualization that effectively tell a story do so by removing noise from your visualization. If we are talking about data visualization, how quality can you say your data is effective? Were you able to identify the noises and were you able to identify them? When we look at data analysis, we look at maybe if you are doing machine learning or you're a data scientist, anything, they are what we call data pre-processing, whereby you clean up the data. But I'm not talking, the noise in data visualization now is not the missing value, the null value, the outliers, the duplicate values. These are not the noise we are talking about. But we are talking about the unnecessary information in your visualization, unnecessary information on your dashboard that makes your message not to be clear. This is what we are looking at. These are the noise you need to take out of your visualization. You are telling a story and your story needs to be concise. Your story needs to be specific and it needs to hit the audience. Your audience needs to make sense of your data in a coherent way. They need to have a follow through. And also, they need to highlight the trends and lights on the outliers. There are some instance or some pivot points your audience want to identify by taking a glance at your visualization. Now, before you can tell story with your data, there is need for you to have an understanding of the data set. There's a need for you to have an understanding of the trend in your results. If you've conducted a survey, you need to understand the outcome of your survey, your findings. And when you understood the findings, then you need to know the visuals that you can use to represent your findings. It's not every chart that you must use. There are some charts that is actually meant for certain functions or certain needs. And also, you need to eliminate clusters and get your audience attention. And finally, if all these four are put together, you can tell a story about your data set with your visuals. Now, for us to effectively tell a story, we need to know how much context do we need to add to create an intelligible but not clustered graphics or visuals with enough background information for the viewers to grab its meaning and the important insight and recommended actions highlighted. What I mean in essence is that we need to understand what are the important things that is necessary in the dashboard. What are the important elements that we must not take out from the dashboard? And what are the things we must eliminate? Going forward, now I'm presenting to you a, a good and a bad data visualization. The chart to the left is a bar chart, but there is little to what we can get from this. We can see numbers, but there is no message that is given. But if you look to the right, then you can get an understanding, an overview of what it is being presented by these visuals, what information is given. Now, we can understand that there is a ticket that is being processed and there is a line graph, and the left and the right graph is the result of the same research. But the left graph had a poor representation, but the right graph had a good representation. Now, two persons can actually carry out a research, and when presenting the report, the person who did the lesser work but have a good understanding of telling stories with the data can get the best out of the research. But the person who understands analytics, who understands data mining, who understands every concept of data analysis, but unable to visualize and tell story, might end up not getting the best. Someone will say it's working smart. Now, let's look at another data visualization. Now, this is a good and bad visualization as well. It's a survey. This, the left and the right charts represent the same thing. The first analyst used a pie chart to represent the outcome of a survey of how do you feel about doing science, a pre and post survey. Now we can see the legend and everything, but the pie chart has the percentage and every information. Now look to the right, a bar chart was used and it was well presented, and the color were restricted to two, the dark gray and the blue. Now, you can see the gray color represented the pre and the blue represented the post. And this information was well presented. Looking at the visuals, you can understand the trend and the direction of the research. Going forward, before telling you a story on how you can tell a story on your visualization, I'm going to explain two important keys, which is quantitative data and qualitative data. Most times you see people talk about uh, numbers. These are quantitative data. The number of sales, you see people talk about the total cost and average cost. This deals with quantitative data. Now, most times we neglect telling a stories with qualitative data. When someone do opinion mining, those who work with natural language processing, how do you tell a story? You are dealing with qualitative data. You are getting information on sentiment analysis. You are getting information about customers' behavior. These are qualitative research. How do you present this as a story using your visuals? Now, a brief understanding of what is qualitative data and a brief understanding of what is quantitative data. Now, qualitative data on consumer might include sentiment, opinions. It can include characteristics, features, behavior and it could be unstructured. It could be a free text collected through surveys, an open-ended questionnaire. It could be an interview. It could be an observation as a lab scientist, as a medical lab practitioner. You carry out experiments in the lab. These are qualitative research. And how do you present your findings in a story like? Now, looking at quantitative data as well, we talk about data on consumers, average transaction count, sales history, the propensity to buy a particular product, measures by numbers, demographics, and the general statistics. Now, at this point, I'm going to take a scenario of reviewing a qualitative storytelling with visuals of a survey of a survey. Let's review a scenario of applying a storytelling with data principles to qualitative data. Imagine your organization recently held a webinar for prospective customers and you've been tasked with collecting attendees' feedbacks, reporting results to management. While you might collect some quantitative data, such as your attendance rate, participant rate, the length of time attendees listening to the webinar, you are also interested in qualitative metrics. What are the qualitative metrics now? Such as impression of the presenter. After this lecture, you might get a survey and say, how how much information do you get from the presenter? Does the presenter have a knowledge of the topic? These are qualitative data. And at the end, the poll will be sent to you and you give a feedback. Now, these are the same thing. What you have been asked in this webinar. So what are the impression of the presenter? What topic did they enjoy most? What are the overall feedbacks? So you've conducted a free text survey and you've applied some findings with verbatim comments and you've presented it in a PowerPoint. Now you need to tell a story with the qualitative data. It could be a walkover for you to tell the story, the number of attendees, the attendees rate, how many persons completed the webinar, how many persons stayed throughout the program, and so forth like that. But the qualitative data now that you want to find out some complaints, some feedbacks from the attendees. How do you go about it? Now let's have a walkthrough. I'm going to have a walkthrough of what was done by Elizabeth Wicks. Now, this is the report of the survey after the webinar was done. The feedback has been collected. Now, we've gotten key information. Now, this is reported to the management. Now, research said that to every information, you have 3 to 8 seconds to glance through and show, and the 3 to 8 seconds you use to glance through an article or a report will give either you continue or you stop. Now, looking at this, if you are to spend 3 to 8 seconds on this report, would you have an understanding of the story? What was there a story given in this report? Do you have an understanding of what is presented? No, because there are too many texts, too many information, and everything look clumsy, and everything look the same. So you can't actually point out some information. Now, let's see what we can do with this. Now, following through this, I want you to have 3 things in your mind. 3 things in working with qualitative data. The first thing we'll look at is that we'll look at how to use color, because color is used to draw your audience attention to the most important aspect of your report. Then the second thing we'll watch out for is to reduce the amount of text in the report. We are talking about storytelling. So we have to reduce the amount of text in this report. And the last thing we are going to do, or the third thing we are going to do, is to quantify the data. These are all textual and structure, but we need to quantify this feedback. And the last thing, we'll bring every of the 3 attributes together and have a story to tell. That is, we'll combine the color, we'll combine the concise text by reducing the text, and we quantify the data and have a full report. Now, let's add color to this. Now, you can see the left is before and the right is after. Now, to check out the difference between how you process these 2 blocks of text. In the image on the right, color was used primarily to draw attention to the top 3 customers. Customer concerns, yes. When used primarily and strategically, color is one of the best tools to focus on audience attention. Now, there is another thing we use here, which is called a pre-attentive attribute. And a pre-attentive attribute is the use of your font size. It's not a good practice to use different font type in visualization, but you can use font size to draw attention to some key information. We've identified some things with color, which you can see from the left visual. Now, we also identify some, we've make some emphasis with font size. Now, how do we do this? We use the font to create an hierarchy of information. Now, and also, if you look at it, we've specified the title got the highest font size. Then each of the feedback was actually divided into 3 now, which has the color, got a lower font size, and the rest of the information got the normal font size. Now, what happens to this report that we got in the left side? The first thing was to work on the headline, the title, the topic sentence. You can see the long topic when responding to questions, what could have been improved, customer top 3 responses were complaints with AV video. The edit is too much, too many information. Now, what did we do? We apply we reduce the long text. So the title or the main title became top 3 customer concerns. Top 3 customer concerns. Then we've got the subtitle, which are the feedback, the 3 major feedbacks. And how did we do it? We reduce the text as well. You know, the original one had complaint with AV quality, but we've reduced it to poor AV quality, deficiency visuals, unclear agenda. Now, the next thing is for us to quantify these results. Everything looks textual. How do we quantify? How do we add numbers to this? How do we add numbers to this? Now, the first thing we did, look at its visuals we've got. So it is very important we provide context by quantifying the data. So even this data is qualitative data, we understand when it was collected, it is likely that we do have some qualitative measures around it. So you must think, what are the qualitative measures that you can use to quantify this qualitative data? Now, let's have a walkthrough together. For example, how many respondents complained about AV quality? Now, we've gotten 45%. Yeah, we've identified the top 3 complaints and feedbacks. Now, out of the people who came to the webinar, how many of them complained about poor AV quality? 45% of them complained. Now, we've quantified that. And we use the horizontal rectangle to represent that. How many people complain about deficient visuals? 25%. Unclear agenda, 18%. Other issues, 12%. Now, you can see, bringing other issues to this, because we have other issues that was complained, but we can't put everything together. So the major ones were brought up and the other ones were classified as others, so as to make it concise, not to have too many information. And to the right also, we now have each of the feedbacks or each of the comments to the horizontal bar. Now, you can see the poor AVI quality is a big issue, and when the webinar is to be conducted next time, the IT department needs to work on poor AV quality. So what is to be done? The IT department wants to know, is it a general problem? Was it one person who said the AV quality was bad? So knowing that it's 45%, the IT department will understand why it is important to correct this problem. Now, the last thing now, which I said we will do, we've added color in the first instance. Then the second instance, we reduce the text, we reduce the headings, and the third thing we did was to quantify this. Now, let's bring everything together and see maybe there is a direct story we can get from the visuals. Now, customer experience issue with webinar. Top issues with webinar. Now, looking at this, within 3 to 8 seconds, can you get a glimpse of what this report is all about? I believe is a yes, because the information is restricted. We have less text compared to the original report that was given. Okay, if you want to see the original report, I can just go back to the original. Okay, so if you want to see the original report, look at the original reports. Within 3 to 8 seconds, can you get a glimpse of this report? Now, compared to this, within 3 to 8 seconds, I believe you should have a glimpse of what this report is all about. Now, this is an art of effective storytelling using a qualitative data. Now, you may ask, how do we go about quantitative data? Because quantitative data or quantitative research is the most common research we see on a daily basis. You're a business analyst, you deal with numbers. If you're a data analyst, most time you deal with numbers. So in the next few slides, we are going to look at quantitative data and telling a story around this. You can always drop your comments with us and we'll get in touch with you. Now, we'll look at the first. This is a report that was given. Someone has conducted a research and he has presented the report to the organization. Now, as a top manager, you look at this report and you have to call the analyst and ask a lot of questions because you can't have an understanding of this report at a glimpse. So you want to find out, so what do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? Now, we are going to have a walkthrough again on how this can become an effective story. Now, looking at the heading, price has declined for all products on market since the launch of product C in 2010. Now, this is the key focus. In product C, it has been seen that price has declined for all products on the market since the launch of product C in 2010. Now, based on the headline, what we are most interested in looking at is the trend of cost over time for each product. We want to know the trend of the cost for each of the products. The variance in color across the bar distracts from this and make the exercise more difficult. You can see different color. You know, I have issues with color. I'm not good at color, but I have issues. So I always like, let it be simple. Now, the variance of color has already complicated a lot of things. Now, here we are going to go through series of iterations of looking at the data than the way we would have looked at it. Now, at this point, the first thing we did that was done here was to take away the color and have a gray, take away the color, take away the grid lines, and have a gray chart. So remove the visual obstacles of the variance in color and see what the resulting graphs look like. At the same time, taking other steps to make sure that things are appropriately labeled and disclustered by removing unnecessary grid lines, which we've done. You can see the labeling very well. Now, we move ahead and look at, going back to the original headlines, which talks about the launch of a new product. So we are primarily interested in what has happened since product C was launched in 2010. So let's emphasize the relevant pieces, forcing our attention there and see what that reveals. Now, upon studying this for a moment, we see clear that there was a decline in average retail price for product A and product B in the time of interest, but this does not appear to hold true for products that were launched later. Now, you can see the black spots, after the great spot in 2008 in product A, you can see there was an increment in, in the grade for the first 2 years. Then from 2010, where we have the dark color, it started declining. And the same thing happened in product B. But when product C was launched, it was the opposite. From 2010, it started increasing and so forth. But this is not evident enough. But we've seen a trend. And we're able to see this trend because we've taken away the colors, the grid lines, so we just have it as a plain visual. Now, if it was not already apparent, it is only now that. So what we can do is to look at, probably think about how we scroll through these bars, then the iterations as well. We can use a line graph and see it more. You can see that in the first product A and B, you can see that the curve is going downward. The curve is going downward. The curve is going downward in the first product A and B. But when it comes to products, when it comes to product C, when product C was launched, the curve started increasing. It started going up. Product D started going up. Product E started going up. So there is a trend. Now, we can still have a better visuals about this. You can see the curve went down in A and B when product C was launched. Now, if it wasn't already apparent, it's probably that with the above, that it is likely makes sense to graph all the lines against the same x-axis so that we can see see it clearly and compare them to each other. So with this line graph, we can compare each of those lines to each other and see how the curve in A and B was declining and why we have an increment in product CDE from 2010. So from 2010, the product was going down, the product A and B was going down, but from 2010, when product C was launched, we see an uprise in the products, in the sales. Now, for the visuals to be more appealing, you can see the orange color. It shows an instance when it started going up. Now, at product C, it increases. But this view also allows us to see something perhaps more interesting and noteworthy. With the launch of a new product in this space, it is typical to see an initial average retail price increase, followed by a decline. Now, after the product increased, at a point it declined as well. That is, in the first instance, product A does not decline immediately product C was launched. But after some time, the curve started going downward. Now, we've got the last one, which gives a summary, another story about this data. Perhaps we also want to note that as of 2014, retail price have converged across products. At 2014, there's a convergence at the retail price with an average retail price of $223, ranging from a low $180 in product C. If you read through product C, it falls at $180 to a high of $260 at product A. So we can see that there was a convergence across the products at 2014. So with established trends, I can roll over for you to see how it started. This was the first visuals. Less information was given. We couldn't tell a better story. Then we identified trends at this point. 20 product B, when product C was launched, there was a decline from that 2010 because product C was launched in 2010. So 28, 29, 2010, that was the highest time product A and B increased. So it started declining. Now, for us to have a better view, we have it in a darker scale. So we can see that 28, 29, 28, 29 in product A and B, there was an increase. But immediately product C was launched in 2010, there was a decline in product A and B in that 2010 downward. Now, we presented it using a short line graph, and we're able to see how 20 product A and product B were declining. The same thing like this. And we represented it with a orange color so that we can see, we can intensify on it to get our audience attention. And also, lastly, we talk about the convergence at the end. So the story has been said here. So less question will be asked looking at this. Now, going forward again, I just want to share 5 top tips when telling a story with your visuals. Number one, you always keep your aim and audience in mind. You must always believe that there are people you are reporting to. And also organize and summarize, then manipulate your data. So when I say manipulate your data, that is, use your data in such a way that your visuals, your data will be responsive to the visuals you want to use. The charts you want to use, make it in such a way that it will work with it. You can see the qualitative data at a point we have to quantify it. Then the next one is that format should maximize what clarity and impact. When you are using your font, it should emphasize on clarity and impact, not to cause confusion. Labels refer to and explain all data in text. So you need to use your label appropriately. And the last one is signal analysis and interpretation to the reader. There should be a walkthrough for them to see this analysis and an interpretation of your visuals. Now, lastly, I'm going to share with you a big 5 personality test results that was conducted between 2 friends. So in this case, let's look at the blue one to be me, then the other the orange to be the friend, which is Mr. A and B. Now, this is a personality test. Different attributes: openness, necrotizing, consciousness, extraversion, agreeableness. These are all features that was identified, and each of them were scaled. You can see the pentagon that was used. The outmost pentagon have a maximum scale of 100. The next one has 80, 60, 40 down to 0. Now, this representation can did, did not really tell a story. It will take the audience to focus for so long before it can have an understanding about what this personality test result represents. Now, someone went further and want to like modify this one and let me give it a better look so that the story can be said properly. We've got something like this. He used a bubble chart. Now, the blue represents the Mr. A, then the gray represents Mr. B. Now, you can see the challenge with this book bubble is that the positioning is bad. You can see different sizes in different positioning. Agreeable for this and this, it's just a bubble. And also, it's not quantifiable. It's not quantifiable. And this was also accepted as well. But another person came up to present the visuals and brought something like this. I said our different personality complement each other. Now, there is an understanding. Now, you can see the line. In extraversion, there's a point 15 against 88, 37 against 39, 44 against 56. And you can see where there is a closeness, the line diminished. It became invisible. Now, this tells a direct story compared to the previous one. So it is very effective for you to tell a story with your data, and you telling an effective story gives your audience the ease to comprehend and interpret what you've presented. So, all being said, it's data science, data analysis goes beyond reporting. It goes beyond your findings. It goes beyond your test for hypothesis. But it became effective when you can represent your data, your result in such a manner that it can get your audience attention, such that within 3 to 8 seconds, your audience can make a decision either to go through your report or not. So, in this lecture, I believe that we've been able to establish how you can report a qualitative data, which we've talked about using color, reducing text, and quantifying the data. Then the blend of the 3 attributes. And also we talked about your quantitative data, how you can filter, reduce color, try to reduce the number of charts you are presenting, and use an effective chart. We saw how a bar chart was presented originally for the reports in the quantitative analysis, but at the end we end up having a line graph. So you should be able to know what chart will be effective to communicate to your audience. So, and be able to know when to apply certain colors. Sometimes we just want to have a grid lines, so let everything looks. No, it's you have an audience which should be the focus of your reports. So with all this being said, I believe that we can't move from reporting to telling stories about our data. We can move from hypothesis testing and presenting the hypothesis in visuals that the audience can interpret without your assistance. And also in this, I've put reference. Yeah, I've put a reference on where you can read through, and there's a book by Scott, Good Shot by Scott Barinato, and also a story with data by Co Newsbosman. I think the book is in Harvard Business Review. You can go through these links and see quality materials on how to have effective data visualization and storytelling. Thank you.